what a powerful group you are. You can tell there's a lot of connection and working together, and truly, you'll even hear tonight, we have to work together, and we need to be able to coordinate, because when we fight against each other, it just makes it so much harder to fight the real enemy.
Right.
And I know we were watching the primaries and going through that with our kids, and one of my sons says, why are we now for this guy that we hated so much earlier? And I thought, got a good point. So anyway, this has been a very interesting session. We found out some good news today, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But I really started working. I am a mother of 7, and we do focus on our homeschooling. And part of that, I'm passionate about history and the Bible, and just felt like to train our children in His Word is the foundation, but then all the subjects that come off of that, I wanted them to know truth, and I wanted them to be able to articulate truth. And I will tell you, it's very interesting to listen to my kids. The night Obamacare passed, 4 of us were out in the hallway with little pocket constitutions, throwing them at each other while we were arguing on Facebook with people about how unconstitutional it was. So they took heart with this, and they are out there now working in the workforce and able to see what we were trying to teach and implement in their lives. I say that because some of the topics that we have to deal with now, right now in Austin, I'll tell you, there are some bills that I'm sure you've heard of. How many of you have ever gone down to Austin and worked a bill? Okay. I just asked because I had never done that until last session. And boy, it's an experience. And one of the things I was mentioning earlier is just when you think you understand it, they suspend the rules and do whatever they want. So you really can't get too high or too low as you go through the process, or you'll go crazy. You really just have to kind of say, okay, that's great, we had a win today, let's keep moving. And last session, right away, we were wanting to carry this bill. For a while, this has been a concern. And the author, the man that stepped up to take the bill, was not our first choice. And you realize at that point, this is someone who's been in the Senate for 20 years. He's going to have priority. He's doing this really for an ulterior motive. And he's not passionate about the bill. Quite frankly, he didn't really, I don't think, care less, honestly. He never really worked the bill for us. So we learned a lot because we had to work the bill. And how many of you have heard of ALAC, or American Law for American Courts? Okay. You would think in this country that we would be using American laws in our courtrooms. And for the most part, we are. But what was surprising was to find out that there are, now what's interesting and where I've learned quite a bit is you do have Jewish courts, but one very important thing about the Jewish courts is most of this is ceremonial, and the tenet of it to begin with is that you come under the law of the land. What we have here recently that is raising up and concerning people would be most notably the Sharia courts, where here's where we split. At its very foundation, it runs counter to our Constitution and to upholding constitutional rights. So right off the bat, we have a problem. So as we see, and we're reading more and studying more about this, we thought, okay, we're in Texas. We have the Senate, we have the House, we have the governor. This should be a piece of cake. Wrong. I was stunned at how hard we had to work just to get people to understand there was an issue. But in the meantime, Tennessee is passing the bill. We've had North Carolina. We've had 10 states pass this bill. And I'll even tell you, there's a handout we gave. If you look, a lot of times they pass Louisiana 33-3 in the Senate, 94-0 in the House. Why? These other states seem to understand that this is a good backstop for safeguarding the constitutional rights for everyone. So we started working this bill last session, and one of the things I learned very quickly was we weren't going to get really far, but we weren't going to give up. And we I will tell you, we prayed a lot and realized, let's make relationships. So we spent our time getting to know people on both sides of the aisle, especially people who had different views from us, to humanize ourselves to them. Because they see Eagle Forum and they're like, oh, I mean, you can see them look at the car and go, oh, great. And what we would do is sit down and start to talk about maybe family, whatever we could to make a connection. And when we did get this bill into committee, quite frankly, the author in the Senate didn't think we'd ever get it out of there. Well, my husband and I walked and went to every committee member over and over and over. And ended up, we got it out of committee and we had a Democrat who voted for it. So this time, when we got it out of the House committee, we had 2 Democrats that voted for it. But I will tell you, that was a real experience, and it was very frustrating to watch how many people had no idea. And these are people governing our state, had no idea this was going on. How many of you heard about the tribunal that's in Irving? On the news? Okay. There's a case in Fort Worth that used and applied to uphold an arbitration case, used the Sharia standard, and upheld it. And that case was in 2003. So to say that they just started this court here recently is not true. It's been here a while. And to say, quite honestly, I'm going to jump forward a little bit. You have heard about the story, and the mayor took a real hard, firm stance. I've met with her and got to know her. She's had death threats. She's been taunted. She says, I don't care. I am not budging. I will tell you another thing. If you read anything in the paper, it's usually misquoted. Sorry, Dallas Morning News, but that's usually what's happening, and it's a shame. Because what a lot of times they say is that this bill prohibits all foreign law. That's not true. We have treaties, which is the international law. We have foreign law that can be applied. If you decided you wanted to apply Japanese law and you were happy with it and it didn't disrupt constitutional rights with you and y'all went into arbitration, you can do that under our law. It cannot infringe on someone's constitutional rights. That's what we're trying to protect. When we started working this session, so we didn't get it through last session, we worked and worked and worked and worked, and it was frustrating, but we got to learn a lot about the process. We got to know the building very well. How many of you have ever walked the Capitol? That place is crazy. I call my husband my human GPS, because they don't number the rooms in order. You just kind of walk till you find it. So this session, we're like, okay, we've got to get this done. In the meantime, what do you see going on in the world? We had, what did he call it, spring, Arab Spring. Okay, now we're in Arab winter. I don't know what's going on, but you look at what's happening with Iran, and you just keep watching and seeing all of this happening, and you keep seeing these cases in the paper. I take cases when I see them, and I put them in a file, and I've got a file about this thick that are cases all over the country. There was a kid at Walmart that posted, he made a joke about a woman in a burqa. Well, somehow CARE found out about it. The kid got fired until he would take classes, sensitivity classes. You've got schools not showing American Sniper because it's offensive to 250 of the Muslims that are at the school. I'm sorry if it's offensive to you, just don't go see the movie. I mean, this is a really simple thing. But that's just a few of the cases. It gets to be where you're seeing so much of it, you're like, when are we going to stand up and say, enough? This is America. Sorry about that. I'll take some medicine and dry my mouth out. It is very disturbing to me. It is sad. I worked in racial reconciliation ministry. I think every human created by God has value. And I will tell you, sitting in the hearings where we're called bigots and racists because we want to pass this law, that's hard to listen to because that's not my heart at all. We took a young man, his family lived down the street from us. The grandparents came and they wanted us to take this young man. They're a Muslim family. They know we're strong Christians. And they said, you're the only people we trust. What does that tell you? To keep that grandson, okay, we had just had our 7th child not too long before that, to bring another child in our home and keep him for the summer because they were having some family issues. And we loved that kid like he was one of our own. So this is not about being a racist. This is about, we have a country, and whether the leader of this country or any of his minions want to decide that it is not an exceptional country, well, I'm sorry for him, but it is. And whatever I have to do and whatever we have to do to stand for that, we will. When we went to go this time for the bill, we were very prayerful, and we picked actually a young man named Representative Jeff Leach. He is a very godly man. He is a very smart man. He's an attorney. But I'll tell you, when we went to talk to him, you don't know how many people I'd go up and talk to, and I'd say, I'd like to talk to you about ALAC, and they'd go, what's that? Which is fine, but these are lawmakers. So when I got to go up to him, and I said, I would like to talk to you about ALAC, he said, oh yeah, I've read it, and I have a couple of questions. I think there's a change we need to make. And I'm like, we found the guy. So he had to go through the whole last session, and we really worked with him to get anything done because the person in the House that also had the bill had decided we would not work that bill at all. And how many of y'all know that's usually probably not a good plan? Yeah. So we ended up, as I said, with nothing but experience and relationships that we have used this session. And so with Representative Leach, who has worked diligently, we were able over these last 2 years, and this is what I see here, and this is what's exciting to me. I believe God knits us together. My faith is at the core of what I do. And it has to be. And to watch God open doors for us. We did a handout that had American Law for American Courts at the top, and there's a young man that's a Marine that put this together for us, and he works with Frank Gaffney. And if you are not familiar with Frank Gaffney, you need to go online, use their website. He has a Center for Security Policy. He was a national security advisor to President Reagan. He is a very, very sharp man. I mean, on anything foreign, any kind of security issues, just a stellar person and a great resource. Well, they back us up on everything. If I'm in an office and come out and need a paper or need research on, will this impact adoptions? I text them, call them, whatever, we have the paper. We were able to do that with whatever, this time around, we had the family law group give every legislator a letter in September saying how pointless this bill was. I don't know why it took you 4 pages to say how pointless this bill was. We actually came back with a 27-page rebuttal within 2 days of all the reasons they were wrong. So I do really want to say how much we bring equal access to women. They are discriminatory against women. They will argue that that's not true, but we have, besides some of the court cases that have happened here, and I'll touch on that in a minute, we had one of our senators here in Texas go to Europe this summer. And they have hidden video in these Sharia courts there. I think they have up to 84 courts now. The women are charged 4 times as much. Their testimony is worth half that of a man. And most of the time, these women cannot move on with their lives because the imam will not grant them the divorce. So they are stuck in either an abusive relationship or they are left to never be able to move forward. So I'm sorry, that's not how we run this country. And that is something that if you want to have your ceremonial, I love my spiritual worship. I love the freedom of religion. I want to be able to worship. And I would love for them to know my Jesus, but if they want to follow this and it does not infringe on someone's constitutional right, then that's a choice they're making, and they're going to have to answer one day for that.
Right.
But when you're going to live in a country that offers the liberties that we have, then that's the way we're going to live. And I feel so privileged and so thankful to have that. And I'm not going to see my children live under anything else. We're going to do whatever it takes to stand for that. They help us when we go campaigning. And the first campaign we did was actually, do any of you know the story about Brian Birdwell? Senator Birdwell? Senator Birdwell? He was one of the first people we campaigned for when he was running for senator. This is a little side story, but it's pretty fascinating. On 9/11, I was supposed to be speaking to a women's group at a church, and they were going to video. Remember I told you I never show up on video? Didn't on that day either. And what happened, 9/11 began, and so what we did is, God just put in my heart, you gather these women and you pray. So for 2 hours, that's what we did. We prayed. And at one point during that time, I said, you know, God can put things on your heart. And I said, it may be pray for Brian in the Pentagon. I don't know how many of you know the story of Brian Birdwell, but the plane hit not far from where he was in the Pentagon, and he was on fire, like glowing. He looked at his skin, and he was glowing, and he was covered. The recovery story is a miracle. But to get to meet him and to get to campaign for him and get to know his wife and hear their testimony and to see that man serve. And he has always been very supportive of us. He's also been careful. He said he felt like if he led that bill, it would look like it was a bitter person. But he has always supported us on American law for American courts. But I think the problem that I see in general with trying to get this bill passed is we've had to be very careful. And I'm not good with political correctness. I'm a polite, kind person. I love people, but I don't like falsehoods, and I don't like pretending.
That's right.
And we've had to walk a line sometimes that I feel like is close to being not genuine, and that's hard because we want the truth and we want to say, look, this is not about the race you are. This is not about the color of your skin. This is about an ideology, not just a religion, but an ideology and a political system that is will have a very difficult time coexisting with a country up until about 6 years ago operated under liberty, freedom. You know, these are the things, self-government, and I don't think any of you in here want to see that any more deteriorated than it already is. But what do we need to do to stand our ground? And I have just felt like I've reached a place at 50 years old, I'm not moving. I'm standing here and I'm not moving. And when you're training up your children and your grandchildren, you want to offer them those same things. And I know we found out today, we've been working really, really hard. We started working on this session last March. We started meeting with Representative Leach. We started getting our ideas together. I will tell you again, God has crossed our paths. One of the men is the former Inspector General for President Bush. He's written letters for us. He's written testimony. He's given us advice, all free. I mean, how does this happen? God just crosses these people in our paths. And General Boykin, we went to a dinner and we were late, and I don't like to be late, and I was very frustrated. And we sat down, and I'm grumbling. We sat down, and I look, and this man stands up as I sat down because he's being a gentleman. And I'm like, they seated us next to General Boykin. God, I'm sorry. Bad attitude. But what was so neat about that is around the time of 9/11, we had what we used to call the war room, and it was where we did homeschool, and we had a big prayer board. And I posted a Post-it note on the wall that had, I don't know if y'all know who Nahada Watt is, but that's his name. He is the head of CARE for many years. I don't know what he's doing now, but he was the head of CARE. And if you go back and look at that picture with George Bush saying this is a religion of peace, one of the worst statements he ever made. If you look behind him, there's Nahatawat. And he is, I'm sorry, but CARE to me is the Al Sharpton of the Muslim movement. They were down there testifying against us, and actually this year, when they were testifying, they do not testify to the words of the bill. They basically get up and talk about how racist we are, bigoted we are, and how we want to harm them. But I thought it was interesting, one man, he was kind of talking, and he goes, I would die for a good person. And I thought, what's your definition of good person? I'm pretty sure I don't make that list. And there's a lot there about understanding definitions, too, of what something is being said and what's really being meant. And I want to jump back for a second. I'm very excited about this group of people. Y'all seem like you're go-getters. Like you're going to do something. You're not just going to sit around and wait for things to happen. And we need to take this and pass it on. And we need to wake up more people. I think you would agree that this is what America really is like, and what we see in the news is what they want us to think it's like, and they want to make you feel frustrated, and they want to make you feel hopeless. But the thing that hit me as we were preparing, we kind of ran into a road bump pretty early with this legislation, and I was praying and I was frustrated. And I felt like I said something about they just seem to have the words, you know, they control the language. And I felt like God just shot back in my heart, you have the word.
Amen.
Amen. From that point on, I thought I need to be very thoughtful about how I walk things out, because I want to stand on truth. We want to stand in righteousness, and we want to honor Him. And when we do that, we treat other people with grace and mercy. And I will always continue to do that, but that does not mean that I cannot speak truth. And that's something I want us, as we go through with the rest of this session, when we do our testimony, we're very careful to make sure we're discussing the language of the bill. What we're looking for is in family court, that we know when those people go in there, they are afforded the same constitutional rights that you and I would have. That's what I want. That's what we want. That's what's so great about this country. I can completely disagree with you on everything. But when you go in a courtroom, or if something happens, I want you to be treated the same way I would be treated. That's what makes us so special. And we are special. I mean, I'm not saying that you can't go to another country. I'm sure this would make Obama's hair fall out. But we don't need to apologize for this nation. We don't need to keep trying to say the right thing, because if you ever notice, no matter what you say, it's going to be a new argument, and you're never going to get it right. How about if we just stop and speak truth and don't budge? I want to tell you today where we are with the bill, and then if you have questions. We did get the committee hearing in the House. It was a little nerve-wracking there for a couple of weeks, but it was really it was so exciting to see. We had 9 attorneys testify on our side. We've been told when they go to other states, they usually have to bring an attorney in, so they were thrilled. I said, we do everything bigger in Texas. And they did such a great job, and there again, we've been able to make connections. So we are expanding our team. This is, to me, part of the team. We keep expanding and connecting. And I really think we're going to be able to make impacts. I know the grid bill, how many of you are familiar with hardening the grid, and that it's not like tinfoil hat things, it's really, truly an issue?
That's what was on the front of that paper you gave us. That was the stuff on the front I couldn't.
It's just making sure, it also would be a benefit for us as a state, because we are the only state that has almost the entire state's our grid. And the connections there that we've been able to make and move that and to have a bill they think is going to come out of the Senate committee on that. We're just moving things further this time. And I got to tell you, we have some great legislators down there, some very strong Christian men and women who need your prayers. They really do. They work hard. There are some that need your prayers for other reasons. And they do. Yeah. I always pray, bring them to their knees or bring them to their knees.
There you go.
That makes it, it's God's decisions between him and them, but they do need prayer. And we were just very excited. We did get it out of committee, and I was praying for 6-3. I thought we could bring one Democrat over it. Well, we didn't realize we were going to have one Republican who just gave us fits. And I can remember sitting in the committee hearing and watching this man, and it was so frustrating. And people that were watching all over the state called and said, "Who is that person?" And it was very frustrating. But then I looked over at the young man that's leading this bill, and he's a Christian, and he never shot back. He kept his composure and grace, and in the end won this guy over, and we ended up passing it out of that committee 7-2.
Oh.
We just found out today, we've been told over and over, and we're up there every week. One day a week, we go every week. Our kids have sacrificed. They have given up playing sports in this one semester because we are gone one day a week. They help each other. They help clean house. They know this is a family effort. Okay, I saw that. We found out today our bill went to State Affairs in the Senate, and we were so excited this year because we have some really strong new senators. And it gets assigned to this committee, and then we start hearing this chairman's not going to put out anything to do with ALAC, religious liberties, the marriage bill, the pastor protection bill. It's just not going to happen. So you know what we did? We did what I think you people are probably very good at. We mobilized, and as of yesterday, I believe they said there were 1,500 calls and letters into the Lieutenant Governor's office. We got a hearing scheduled today. It's for next Monday. And the pastor protection bill did get an emergency hearing. Someone called a point of order, so they're going to have that next week. I'm hoping personally that those 40 pastors are in the room with us when we have our hearings, so they can be praying for us.
Yeah.
We'll stay and pray for them and sign on to their bills. So y'all can pray that with us, that we're all there Monday making some noise. But it's we really feel like it's step by step. We are praying. We still have to get it. We've got, was it 34 days, 33 days? I mean, the clock's ticking. But we're not going to give up. We're not going to back down. But I would ask you to pray. I would ask you, if you can, to call the calendar committee in the House. I can email you the whole list with the numbers.
Please.
I try to also put where they're located because it will matter if you have family or friends that are, say, in Chairman Huffman's district, and you can contact them. That's going to have much more weight with her than just me calling or you call. You know, they want to hear from their district. So I always try to include where these people are located. So if you know people in that area, you can ask them to get involved. I think that's about it as far as, well, oh, and also calling the State Affairs Committee in the Senate. We need to let them know. And if you want to call the Lieutenant Governor's office, I think it's good to keep letting him know. He did tell us he was going to pass this, and he did set up a committee for ALAC, and, you know, and its grassroots board. So we are hoping that he will stick to his word. But that's really kind of gives you the whole, I guess, picture. I kind of went through a lot of information there. But if you have questions, is it their time for a few questions?
Yes. Any questions?
What is the number of the bill?
Very good.
That was my question.
I can't believe I didn't say that. I feel like I ate sleep. It's HB 562 is the House bill. Representative Leach. 562. That's why, again, my husband, he's not only the human GPS, but he can remember every bill number that we. And then Senate Bill 531. That's Senator Campbell. And their companion bills, which is supposed to, if we can get them both moving, it will benefit us. It'll go quicker. So they have the same language. And again, this is family court, and it's really, think of a lever. If someone comes into family court and they want to apply something from the tenets of this, any foreign law. We had a guy testify about German law. We did have some family trial lawyers come in and say, hey, we're in Travis County, and right now we're trying a case with Dubai law. So if that clicks into place and there's a fundamental constitutional right being impeded, it's kind of like, think of, okay, then American law, this bill, we click in and say, does this deal with comity? Does it deal with foreign law clause, choice of law? I mean, there's all these pieces, these holes, and it needs to be solidified. The legislature, that's their job, is to take what's public policy and common practice, solidify it into a precedent, and we want to put that in there, and that's the main thing we're after. It's very simple. It's not convoluted. We're not trying to change everything. We just want to make sure that every person going through that court system is being treated and afforded the constitutional rights of Texas and the United States. So. Anybody else have a question? No.
Another question. Is that for America also working? Okay, because I've sent in, I get their information on email, and I've sent in a petition or signed it.
Yes.
For us, and I feel like there are probably others that send things out. I don't know.
You know, thank you for asking that. That's one of the people that has been the biggest help. He's actually going to go, I think, switch around, but he has been sending all those. And what happens is, I'll get a call from the representative, then I text Act for America, Grassroots, Joanne Fleming, the Grassroots America, Eagle Forum. There's quite a few groups, and I've got text, and I'll be like, okay, this is what we need to do. And those people have been incredible because they mobilize their troops and get the letters out. I'm one of those that if somebody's already created the wheel, let's use their wheel. And this guy that was writing these letters did such a good job that a lot of times we would just take his letter and say, thanks to Chris for doing this, we're passing this on. But just kind of coming together, I will tell you, I just want to compliment this whole team that we've been working together with. They have worked very hard and have no one's looking for credit, they just want the bill passed. They just want to make sure it gets passed. So it's been wonderful to work with just a really good group of people. And they're very prayerful. Well,
I shouldn't even say this because you are going to get it done. But if the Lord chooses to not get it done, it's fine, which I can't imagine. But what are the comeback situation? I mean, will we do this again next year?
we're not going away. I don't know, he misbehaved. I mean, when in the hearing, he knew. He came back and said, I overstepped my bounds. We were talking to the guy in his office. I said, well, here's the deal. We can pass it this session, or we'll just be back next session. I mean, we're not leaving until this is passed. So, we can become very good friends over the next 5 years, whatever it takes. But, do we really want it to grow? Because there is a group, Center for Security Policy, and when they started looking for these cases, they're growing each year. There's more and more cases each year. And I always tell people when they say there's no issue with Sharia, I said, well, it's interesting because there's a website by a lawyer who is bragging about all the Sharia court where it's being used, and he's for it. So why would he have the website with the 70 cases listed or whatever? He's excited. So that tells me it's happening somewhere.
Yeah.
And again, they only register the appellate level and higher, so we don't know what's going on below. And 3 of our attorneys who are testifying are former judges, and 2 of them have had that happen in their court. So that was helpful.
Wow.
I have to admit, and I don't know, maybe I live in a goldfish bowl, but I was surprised to hear that we allowed law from other countries to be used at all in our.
No, when this first started, I felt it was like, what? What's wrong with American law? And as you start going through it, what really kind of drew me in was they call it transnational law. It's when our Supreme Court was looking at European court and going, oh, I like what they're doing. And Ginsburg is like, ours is old and outdated. I'm like, we're the only country that has not changed constitutions. It's worked for 200 years. You're 200 years old. You need to move on. She's very frustrating. It's very frustrating. I mean, it's like, here's this incredible document that they had the foresight. Think about the miraculous writing that applies still today. And that's very frustrating. And so that kind of got my attention. And then the more I started looking into this, and then I learned, the Jewish court, Jewish people kind of came out in force and said, oh, hold on, this will impact us, and we have our marriage ceremonies. But then we work with a man, here again, another person brought into the loop, Rabbi John Hausman. And Rabbi Hausman speaks like 5 languages. He's an attorney. He speaks Farsi. He speaks, it was one of those things where he had it all in one package. He's a rabbi and an attorney. And he goes, this is not a problem for us, because the very tenet of our religion is that we would come under the law of the land. And so he's been a great witness.
It seems to me that when you have a court that is deciding law and deciding punishment, that's got to be against our Constitution.
There was,
Especially if any of
Well,
the punishments are what I read.
Well, there was one, and I don't remember the case name, but as I first started studying these, there was one, I think this had more about corporate. I think it had to do with a corporation, and this does not impact corporate law, this is just personal. But that was one of the punishments, was, and this was an American being tried by, I can't remember the country, but it was, one of the punishments was lashes. I was like, and they didn't uphold that. They did get that one right. But, you did have the one in New Jersey where the woman was in an arranged marriage. She was being raped and beaten. They went to court in New Jersey. And he upheld it because he said he's just practicing the religion he's been taught. Now, when it got referred up, they were like, you're an idiot. And they overturned it. But the fact, if you're that woman, first of all, what does she have the money to keep going? And second of all, what did she live under for the time where they're trying to make this decision?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where your mind first has to kind of wrap around the fact that there is some about law, and I know like with treaties you have international law, but when it comes to these things that should be so common sense, I think that's where it's frustrating, first of all, that it's happening, but second of all, that you just can't get a bill passed.
Again, I'm no expert on this, but am I right? I mean, if you take a look at Europe, England, France, aren't they a lot further down the road than we are with this? And what does that actually look like? I mean, I hear bad things, but on the other hand, every now and then you just hear somebody that says, no, it isn't that bad, but I don't know.
It looks like Baltimore.
Does it?
It looks like
There-
Baltimore does now.
There are at least, they said 80 of those courts they know functioning, but what's happening there, and this is what is a concern. I mean, I look at also, when you look at what we've had in America, and we're watching this erode, to me, that's where the flare goes up, because if you were looking at America that valued what our roots are and that valued faith and family, I wouldn't be as concerned, because that would try to come in and there would be this pushback. But now we've got a president apologizing all over himself to these countries, but beheading the Christians, we're on a high horse. And all I can think of is foolish things will seem wise. I mean, he's the things that we look at and go, are you kidding? This is, you kind of look and go, it's just playing out what God said would happen. I mean, but at the same time, where they're starting, they first were just doing family law, then they keep adding things in to where they ask for criminal cases. Well, you know what happens? If that's you, and you're walking through there and they steal your bike, you're pretty much out of luck. Because it's going to go, if it went to this Sharia court, they're not going to deal with you as a non-believer.
Right.
You have no rights.
That's it.
Now, I will tell you, they will tell you all day long, when the mayor of Irving sat down with 2 of the state reps, and one of them helped us write this bill, and he's been working on this for quite some time. They said, will you use Sharia? And the man said, no, I wouldn't do that. And he said, well, then you would support our bill. And he's like, no, he's stuck because he knows. And there's a problem. I mean, my husband knows. We have shelves at home full of books and research. And if you want any information on things to read up more about this, there's quite a few good places. I want to know that I know that I know. I don't want hearsay. I want to know where the research came from. I want it documented. And there's enough to be concerned. In their own words. Remember the Holy Land trial? Do y'all remember the Holy Land trial? Okay, this is important, and I'll wrap it up here. But there was a couple out on a bridge, and she was in her full, hijab. And she's looking out, and they've got a camera, and they're taking pictures of the structure of the bridge, which, according to our president, would be profiling, but the police followed and did the right thing, because when they got back and searched his house, they found 80 banker boxes full of material. And in there, it was all about the plan to take down, it was called civilization jihad. And one of the ways they come in through there is through, and I want to say I want to be really careful. When we lived in California, we had dear friends that were from Kuwait who escaped when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. We love those guys, and we spent time with them. They brought us a thing of water from the Jordan River because they knew Jesus was baptized in the Jordan River, and that would matter to us. This is about the people who have set their mind on destroying what's here. That's the concern I have, and it's not just a few people. And so when you have a whole plan, I don't know, if you had an evil plan to take down something, would you write it all out in a book? I don't know. I've always thought I'd just keep it in my head. I don't want it written down for people to find. Well, they found the list, and it's a booklet. We have a memorandum on it, and it lists out what they planned. And there was jihad through the legal system. I mean, it's through the schools. You get in those Muslim student associations that go in. I don't know if you saw the ones where I'm not a huge fan of how Pamela Geller sometimes presents things. I think she's very bold, but that's not my. It's a very different style. But she was screamed at and threatened, and this went on the entire time she's in there trying to speak. And I just find it interesting that that's allowed. That's free speech, but somehow for us to even talk about this would not be considered free speech for them. And so by looking at that document, and they presented it at the trial, it found CARE and a lot of these groups as co-conspirators. To add to that, they have gone before 4 federal judges to have that label removed, and no federal judge has removed it. The fact that they are in the White House, that CARE is the go-to consultant for most of these leaders, that's concerning. And if you ever want to get more information, that's something to study. It's either Stephen Emerson, Frank Gaffney. You go look these guys up, and you'll find plenty of documented information. And that's what I think is so important, that we educate ourselves. We're not out to tear people down. We're out to stand for our country. And if you want to live here and enjoy those freedoms and enjoy those liberties, you are welcome. If not, then understand I'm not going to back down.
That's right.